Joining us now, Vanessa Neumann. She is an expert on South America and a noted author. You can follow her at Vanessa Neumann. And she's also the president of Asymmetric and becoming a regular now on the John Fredericks Radio Network. We see we can't get enough of her because she's so good and talented and insightful. Vanessa, great to have you. So, Vanessa, I dared at the press conference yesterday. I dared to go where other men don't go. Well, how was that star? Was that Space Odyssey, right? Go where none other has gone before or something. I dared to change the topic yesterday off the Russian collusion, Helsinki, whatever we're talking about, and try to ask a legitimate question about something else going on in the world. And I got an article written about me as a result of it. So that kind of just shows you where we are right now with the White House press conference. So, incoming president of Mexico, this to me should be the biggest story. That's why I asked this question yesterday. Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador, AMLO, as they affectionately call him. So he starts out and he says, we've spent all this money on the military trying to beat these cartels. We got people getting assassinated all over the place. We can't get a judge in. Why don't we just give them amnesty and the heck with it. Bring our military back. They have better, the cartels have, tanks and planes. Let's bring them back. And then yesterday he says, you know what? I've been thinking about this. And maybe we should just legalize all drugs in Mexico and tax it. Because, look, we're not going to stop it. So let's give amnesty to the cartels, and then let's legalize all forms of narcotics in Mexico. We can be the legal, we can raise billions of dollars in taxes and let the chips fall where they may. And nobody covers it. Is this unbelievable or what?
I think it is unbelievable. I think this is a huge story, and I'm glad you're discussing it. And thank you. It's an honor to be on again with you, and a pleasure to discuss this again. So the AMLO presidency and his proposals are actually really very interesting, and they're a real mixed pot. So there are some really good ideas for Mexico, not so much for the U.S., but, hey, he's the president of Mexico, not the president of the U.S., so he's going to do what's good for his country, not what's good for our country, right? So let's start with that premise. So some of the ideas that he has proposed are kind of not all that bad and have been discussed for a long time, and they've been kicking around Mexico discussion on security since Felipe Calderón he militarized, it was the president in 2006, Felipe Calderón, who really militarized the war on drugs. And because the national police are so corrupt in Mexico, throughout Mexico, all the local police, he said, that's it. We're handing it over to the federales, and the military is going to take over security. Now, that has resulted in an escalation of violence. And by the way, that's not surprising. Like, we've seen this in other parts of the world. When you put your military in charge of, military is very good at killing people, but a lot of people get killed in the crossfire. So even though they succeeded in cooperating more with U.S. security, and you had all of these, high-profile stories of Las Marinas, the Mexican Marines bringing in El Chapo Guzman and bringing in some other capos, and that was great. A lot of civilians got killed, and so if you're a Mexican voter, I was better off without this militarization. So AMLO is right that what he needs to do for Mexican security and what Mexican voters want is to decrease corruption of national police, is to get the military out of that operation and get the local police to be more effective, less corrupt, and improve their training, improve their salaries. That's not in and of itself a bad idea. There's other stuff, though, that when you mix it into the pot, that's really very worrying, and that's why you saw Pompeo and Mnuchin and the Secretary of Homeland Security and Jared Kushner go down there last week, because America's wants to understand what's going on. He also wants to not only give amnesty and legalize drugs, he wants to give amnesty and give some sort of truth and reconciliation commission for the cartels, which means you give us intelligence, you fess up to your crimes, we reduce your penalties, especially if you fess up to crimes of recruiting women, children. This is something similar to what we've seen in Colombia, which I know very well. But the problem with this is he also wants to dismantle their equivalent of the CIA, something called CSIN, which is when you get the military out and you dismantle your equivalent of the CIA, and you're now want to legalize drugs, which has been in discussion since Felipe Calderón's era, for the last 12 years, and he's going to establish a free trade zone on the border with the U.S. That's in his proposal. Is you start to get a very toxic mix. You're going to get a lot of more drugs entering the U.S., and you're going to get a lot of U.S. tourism down there because you're going to go where the drugs are legal and try and bring them back for yourself, right? I mean,
right.
that's how that's going to shake out.
So, Vanessa, let's just investigate this and go a little deeper. Vanessa Neumann with us from Asymmetrica. So, Vanessa, the AMLO, the incoming president, according to news reports, he's granted his interior minister carte blanche to consider legalizing all drugs in Mexico. I mean, this is a very interesting approach here. Not good for the U.S., but like you said, he's trying to do something new, and he's trying to do what's best for his countrymen. And the new Mexican government, they've promised to respond to this, package of judicial reforms, all this violence. So I guess let's just talk brass tacks here. I mean, is there any way? I mean, look, amnesty, the way I understand it, he has the power to give them amnesty, right? He's got that power. So if he decides to do that, all these cartel capos are going to get amnesty, and there's not much anybody can do about it. But can you envision a legislative solution to making all drugs in Mexico, narcotics, legal? Can you see that getting through the legislature? I mean, how would that work, and how would that even be possible?
Well, I mean, so AMLO won in a resounding victory. I mean, he won in a huge landslide, and not just a landslide in the presidential election, but a landslide in the local elections. He won his party, or he won in every he won the presidential election in every state but one. And he has governorships in a majority of the states, his ruling coalition, and a majority in both chambers of their Congress. So he has a huge mandate. So it is feasible that this could happen, right? So they could pass a national legislation to grant amnesty, and then the governors are in charge of running the local police and the local investigations, right? It's a very federalist system down there, right? It's very pushed down to the state.
Right.
So a bit like the U.S., right? So that could very well happen. Now,
right.
The United States has announced, sort of quietly, I'm not sure it's really hit the headlines, but it's really well known around D.C. that they're, tracking this possibility. Because then the next question will be the money in the banking system. So we work a lot on, cleaning up trade-based money laundering or anti-drug cartel action. So so they're going to want to know. They're going to want to make sure that Mexico doesn't become sort of a money laundering hub from cartels from everywhere, because it'll become an environment. Now, the legalization of drugs in and of itself is something that even some American thinkers have proposed, because the idea is, if you get a Novartis or a Philip Morris or something, to make the weed and you tax it, and the Novartis makes the cocaine or something like that, like you can regulate big corporations in ways that are easier to regulate than a drug cartel. Right? You can tax them and you make it legal. So that's been kicking around. Now, Felipe Calderón, who militarized it, and I've met him, and he and a number of other people said this is not the way to do it, because the cartels, it'll just feed organized crime, and we know it will, and they are involved in other things and other forms of corruption. So We'll see. It could very well pass, is the answer to that. And it's an idea that's sort of not novel. What I think is more alarming is the fact that it will become a hub for both drug tourism, money laundering for cartels, and the dismantling of the intelligence service, CSEN, really spells, to my mind, even more trouble than the legalization of narcotics.
How is this going to affect, if any of this went through, and based what you're saying now, Vanessa, this is why I wanted to get you on today. Based on your analysis, you're saying both amnesty and legalization, sounds like you're saying both have a better 50% chance than going through if AMLO decides to do this. So having broke it down the way you did, and of course getting rid of their CIA complement, their KGB complement, whatever you want to say, intelligence apparatus, what impact would that have on the United States?
Well, it's very worrying, which is why, the United States immediately sent Pompeo and Mnuchin, within olive branch to engage in high-level conversations, to tell the new president, hey, we hear you, we want to work with you, not against you, we want to keep you on side. The military cooperation between the United States and Mexico is very, very strong, always has been, for a number of reasons. Because of the shared border, because Mexico also sits in something called NORAD, which is the air defense system of the U.S. and Canada. Technically, officially it's just the U.S. and Canada, but you have quite a few Mexican military officials also form a part of it. So the intelligence sharing is really important, and if their intelligence apparatus goes down, that's not going to help the U.S. So one of the things that that's going to be a problem and a threat, because it will become a magnet for, as I said, for groups from other places. I think last time I was on your show, I talked about that. One of the things that the U.S. is looking at also is, how much money from not just the Mexican cartels per se, but from other groups is kicking around the Mexican banking system, like from the Venezuelan government, the corruption, and they're one of the big drug trafficking gangs in the world, right? Or the Colombian cartels who sell to the Mexicans. So that's, if the intelligence services are going to go down, the U.S. is going to try and push back and maintain that, because it's in the U.S. interest because of their intelligence sharing with the military cooperation. But they will also be looking at getting greater financial intelligence, and they were going to create sort of a carrot and stick system for Mexico, right? Like, play ball. Give us better information on the dirty money that may be kicking around your system, and maybe we'll be a little softer about it. Otherwise, you can start facing a whole bunch of sanctions. We know how strong Treasury Department is, or we can create other punishments. So you're going to be looking for a balanced carrot and stick from the U.S. on that. Of course, at the end of all this is all really nuanced and complicated. But, if you want to stop drugs entering the U.S., Americans need to stop buying them. I mean, unfortunately, it really is quite as simple as that. If you don't buy them, they don't come in, So.
Well, that is Ock's law, right? It's always the simplest solution, as they say. We're with Vanessa Neumann. She's an expert on South America politics and policy, and she is a president of a firm called Asymmetrica, and you can follow her on Twitter. Good follow at Vanessa Neumann, Neumann EU, not UE, at Vanessa Neumann, and you're good to go right there. Vanessa, I got about a minute and a half here. So this meeting, Jared Kushner, Mike Pompeo, Steve Mnuchin, all going to Mexico, not a very highly publicized meeting, kind of kept it to themselves. As you say, try to get a dialogue going, figure out what is going on. But is there any leverage or pressure that the U.S. has to say to President Lopez Obrador that, look, this getting rid of your intel, bad idea, legalizing drugs, worst idea, amnesty, worst of all, three ideas. What leverage do we have in order to influence their policy?
Well, two things: NAFTA and the U.S. Treasury Department's ability to sanction. So basically, so AMLO has come up with some other good ideas. Like, he has said that the best way to get Mexican immigrants to stop leaving Mexico and entering the U.S. is to reduce the violence and reduce the poverty in Mexico. So he has a whole infrastructure development plan to integrate the poorer regions and improve the economy. So that would be great for the U.S. And he has said that he wants to negotiate with Trump, and he wants NAFTA 2.0 to work. So he's not like a crazy, crazy socialist who just wants to stick it to America. He very much wants to work with America. So that negotiation, and then, Treasury Department saying you got to clean up your financial act, and we will play ball with you, are the two things, because those are the two ways to cripple an economy: to remove them from, to end the free trade agreement, which would also harm in some sectors of American industry. That's another conversation, and then would and also the Mexican economy. So, if the U.S. is coming to the table with NAFTA, shared defense, and Treasury Department, if they feel that the Mexican government is too much in bed with the cartels, they'll start sanctioning them, and that's not going to be good, because it's going to make Mexico sort of a no-go financial area.
We're out of time.
That's really going to spell trouble.
We're out of time for this segment. I really want to thank Vanessa Neumann. Great insight, as always, Vanessa, and so spot on. You can follow her at Vanessa Neumann or go to her website, Asymmetrical. She's the president. Vanessa, thank you. I really appreciate it.